ways to adjust the steam flow into the pistons. As you got the engine moving, you didn't need as much steam to keep it moving. So by using that, you could finely adjust the valve control, finely adjust the steam into the cylinders, much finer than you could with the regulator. And it therefore used less steam and less water, less coal. Obviously, using less steam, using less coal. That's why I say it's the farmer's friend if used properly. In reality, what in practice the driver would open on starting, you'd release the brake, you'd open the regulator partly, release the brakes, pull that further open, and hopefully if the engine didn't slip, so you could do, you then start moving. As you got moving, you gradually wind that towards the middle gear position with in effect neutral. And the closer you got to that middle gear position, the less steam you'd be allowing into your pistons. Obviously you have to nurse it and judge it, so speed builds up and you use less and less. And eventually you'll finish up, before too long that'll be wide open and the driver will be controlling the speed just with that. Moving across then we come to the fireman's controls, although one's on the driver's side. That and that do the same job. Behind you, my dear, and you sir, there's a lever, handle. That handle there, and there's one at that side, not that one, the one.
For a few more. Yeah, but we'll certainly get you in before close down.
Mind the gap? I'm thinking 36 wide.
Yeah, but the security will most certainly throw it out.
We've got what's called a reverser. Full down one way, we go forward. The other way, we're going backwards. As you increase speed like a car, you go into a higher gear, second, third, fourth. This one, you wind it back. It's called notching back. That registers on this brass plate here. That changes the angle of the valve gear going in the cylinders. The steam engine uses less steam and becomes more efficient. Mallard had and still has either a steam brake for the engine or vacuum brake for the coaches. That is not as efficient as the modern day air braking system. This engine is now fitted with an air compressor driven by steam underneath the engine. It's now got air brakes. As you pull the regulator out, this gauge here measures the amount of steam that's being used in the cylinders at any moment in time. Some might say that that gauge there is the most important. I say it's the least important. It tells you how fast you're going, but in the scheme of things in a steam engine, that isn't very important. You should see why in a minute. These two gauges here are the water gauge glasses. It's a bit dark, but those at the back might be able to see at the moment. There's a glass tube inside there, and the water level is only about that high at the moment. This gauge here is the main steam pressure gauge of the boiler. The red line shows you when the safety valves blow off at the top. When that happens, steam's escaping and not being used by the engine for which it was made for to move it. Because for every minute that steam escapes, there's so many gallons of water being wasted, because obviously steam is water. The tender can only hold 5,000 gallons of water, so you can't afford to waste water. So the best case scenario is a nice fire, about that much of water, and about 225 pounds of steam. The worst case scenario is the poor old fireman was on the booze the night before, he's in a grumpy mood, or he's got a poor quality dusty coal, he's got a poor fire, not enough heat in the fire, low in water, and heaven forbid low in steam, because if he's low in steam he can't use the injector. The injector is the way that a steam engine moves water from the tender to the boiler. There's a series of cones inside there, and it's called a Venturi effect. When hot steam meets cold water, it's sucked in. That doesn't work. It's what you call up the creek without a paddle time, because in here is what's called a fusible plug. In the water space, normally covered with water, but at this moment in time it's now exposed because the water level's dropped. There's lead in the middle of that plug. The fire melts the lead. Can you see where I'm going?
Yeah.
The water from the boiler that's left goes through there, goes onto the fire, puts the fire out. The engine's come to a stand now anyway because it's run out of steam. The engineers, because that's all that can do anything, have now got to wait for the engine to cool down, so that's about 4 or 5 days, before they can get in there, have a look, not only at the plug, but because water has gone out of the boiler at a great rate of knots, it's potentially damaged the boiler. So to drop a fusible plug is a no-no, you don't do it. This is part of the train protection system, which was developed by the Great Western Railway way back in the 1930s, believe it or not. It's now connected to a sophisticated same black box as on an aircraft. It's colour blue, but it does exactly the same thing. It measures all activities on the footplate. You probably haven't got time, but underneath the engine, at the front, there's a big round piece of metal, about that round, about that thick. It's a magnet. Which goes on the main line, between the track, there's also magnets. Depending on the colour of the signal, what happens when they don't touch, but they meet. If it's a green signal, that goes black, bell goes off, nothing else happens. If it's yellow or red, that changes to a sunflower, the horn sounds, and then the driver's got literally only 5 seconds to cancel that, otherwise the brakes come on by themselves. And at that point, the driver cannot do anything about it.
Not for about a full minute.
No, the driver, the recorder records that information, and it's supposed to be saying that the driver was about to pass the red light, and you don't pass the red light on the railway because it could be catastrophic. Okay? Nowadays, in fact since Christmas, this also was installed. It's a very sophisticated mobile phone come satellite navigation device. So at any moment in time, the signalling centre knows where the engine is. Okay? But there's a red button in there. If that's pressed, all signals within a radius of 15 miles goes straight to red. And you can do nothing about it. Because bearing in mind that a high-speed train nowadays travelling at 125 miles an hour takes about a mile and a half to stop. But the last one on the 27th, yeah, we're just coming. And it is potentially the most interesting one, exciting one, because it's going the same way that Mallard went, downhill southwards to London. And depending on the crew on the day, and depending on the traction inspector on the day, if he's got out of bed the right side, right, he had a good breakfast, and he's happier waving at the train spotters on the station, rather than looking at that, potentially 3 figures. Potentially.
That would be cool.
Well, I'm afraid I've got to move you on now. So.
Have the other A4s been